Welcome to Game Retailer Ramblings. My name is Travis Severance. I'm coming to you live from Rochester, New York today at the Millennium Game Studios, home of the largest game store in the United States. Today, we're going to have a conversation a little bit about profit. We're in business to make a living, to earn money, to grow, to expand, to pay our employees, to continue to have great products on the shelf and host great events and continue to upgrade the store. And everything starts and ends with profit. If I don't make money here or that money decreases, I can't do anything better. I can't do raises. I can't do bonuses. I can't bring in new product lines. I need profit to function. So I've got some peers in the industry that think maybe I'm a little bit too profit focused. I hear whispers of that from time to time. That is to say that without it, I don't exist. Talking to some of my distribution partners, they're quick to remind me that somewhere between 17 and 23% of their accounts will turn over in any given year. That's about 1 in 5 game stores annually that are failing. Now, there's a bunch that end up coming into the market, and some years that's more, and some years that's less, and it's challenging to navigate. But the reality of it is, we built this business backwards. I need this much money to exist. We have to have this many products on the shelf in order to do that. We have to make this much on those products in order to continue doing those things. So if we're not profit-centric and we're not thinking about profit in general, then there's no way for us to be able to manage anything that happens in the industry. And for those people that have been around, whether you're a customer or you're a retailer or you're an employee of a retail store, this industry ebbs and flows significantly. There's big highs, and then we kind of come back to reality a little bit. There's a lot of different factors that come into play that adjust those things. A lot of people are concerned this year that sales for us will end up being down because it's an election cycle. To speak about these products that we sell, nothing I sell is a must-have. So I'm selling luxury goods, and I'm selling goods that nobody needs to have them in order to exist. So it's an interesting spot to be in. It's entertainment, it's micro-entertainment, which is part of the reason why we have events and different promotions that we do. But by and large, you don't need our cardboard, you don't need our plastic, you don't need any of this stuff in order to survive. So the way that my business is set up, it's set up in a way where I don't have a lot of expectations on the consumers that come in with regard to how they decide to use my business and shop in my business. We're set up in a way where we've got a pay-to-play space where it's either a purchase model or you're going to pay to be in an event in order to be able to get in that space and use that space. There's plenty of people in the country that are running game stores today that don't charge their customers anything. Part of the problem that I have experienced in that model, because we did that for years and years and years, is it puts the game store owner in a really weird position in that the hope with that model is that the goodwill that you're giving those customers with regard to the play space that you're paying the same amount of rent on that you're paying on for everything else is then going to make them, for whatever reason, decide they're going to purchase things in your store, whether it's sodas or snacks or games. And talking to other retailers, it can be a resentful situation. But the reality of it is you set the rules of your store. You decide if you're going to have a play space. You decide if inside of that play space, you're going to give them access to a free board game library. We don't have a free board game library. I don't rent board games. I sell board games. It's part of the way that our model works. Now, we have demo tables that we rotate on a weekly basis. Those demo tables have games that we're going to feature in some of our events, and our employees are trained on how to sell those games, and they provide experiential retail to customers that decide to come in to interact with the store in that way. It gives us an opportunity to kind of relationship build. We can let them know that we have expertise in these areas. It gives them the opportunity to take a look at something maybe that wasn't on their radar necessarily when they came in the door. So as far as my contract that I have with customers, it's very simple. If we're open and you're following the regular social constraints of whatever you're supposed to do as a normal human, you can interact with my store in whatever way that you see fit. If you choose not to purchase items from us, that's okay. If you choose not to play in our events, that's okay. If you don't like the pricing on things, that's okay. I function in a world where 90% of the stuff that I sell, you can find for 30% cheaper on your cell phone and have it delivered to your house in 48 hours. That is a crazy place to sort of be in and try to exist in, and yet we've still grown and grown and grown over the course of the last 14 years that I've owned the business, and we're the largest in the country right now. So I want to spin around to the way we choose to price collectibles. We choose to price collectibles as close to market pricing as we possibly can. There's a whole ton of reasons, and there's a bunch of economics that go into that decision. There's plenty of retailers out there that choose to price their stuff at full MSRP. There's plenty of retailers that choose to price their stuff at $1 over cost. Everybody's going to do it a little bit differently. We choose to price collectibles the way that they are because the market fluctuates and there's more economic drivers when it comes to supply and demand when we're dealing with collectibles and single product than anything else that I have on my shelf. That's not to say that we don't have piles of board games that occasionally, if you try to find them online, they're going to be 30% higher than what we're charging because we're staying at MSRP. So I hear the term price gouging, or I hear the term scalping, or I hear any other derogatory term that you want to use with regard to what the cost of a collectible good is in my store. And the first thing that I want to point you to is that the S in MSRP stands for suggested. And there's a reason why it stands for suggested. And part of that has to do with some of the pricing laws that we have in the country, but a lot of it has to do with the reality that the manufacturer of that game does not know the economics behind my business. We live in a country where the economics of somebody's business is completely different based on the region that they happen to exist in. So a game store's cost in Rochester, New York versus Corbin, Kentucky versus Tallahassee versus San Diego, those economic factors are going to be a lot different. There's a bunch of things that come into play. Rent, wages, shipping, population, average median income. There's a lot of things that factor into play. So a publisher puts a desired cost on their good and they make that a suggested cost, and then it's our choice as retailers to decide if that works for our business. Most of the time, those goods are set in a way where we're making 50%. So to make it simple, a $10 game typically costs us around $5. Now, the economics in the industry have changed over the course of the last 14 years, and now it's actually more around 48%, just due to some other factors and some costs that we've incurred and different things that we've had to endure as retail owners over the course of the last couple of years. So that 2% cuts into our margin. So when we talk about how the store functions, it's broken down into these pies that are fixed expenses and they're soft expenses. Fixed expenses are things like rent. Soft expenses are things like payroll. Based on the number of people that you want to have, that number will fluctuate based on how you decide to staff, what your staff level is, your personnel that you carry specifically. Soft costs are things like social media spend. Our energy costs are a fixed cost, but they are soft in that they fluctuate from winter to summer and those things. In most cases, we deal with a 48% margin. With a company like Ravensburger, that's not the case. Ravensburger has decided they are going to sell me goods and I'm only going to get 37 off. So I'm not going to get the standard 50% off that I get from almost every other company that I deal with, or 48%. I'm going to get 37% off. So when you look at that as a percentage and you apply what I make after I sell that product and pay for that product, I'm making 13% less than what I would on another item that was similar from another publisher. That 13%, I have to make a decision. I can pay my rent, I can pay my employees, or I can upgrade the store. I can't do all three of those. I'm losing 13% of what I would normally gain from that, and I have to decide which of those three buckets I'm not going to pay anything into because the pricing is the way that it is. Or, in a free market system like we have, I can choose to price that up. I can price that product up to try to meet the demands of what I need in order to run my business, which is a 50% margin, give or take. There's a lot of volume models. There's different things that go into that. Is a longer conversation about how you manage to deal with some lower margin items and some net profit stuff that you deal with that make it so that you can absorb that sort of a hit, but it's harder to do. When you look at something that's priced in my store that's a collectible product, 99% of the stuff that I sell in my store is actually below MSRP. And it's below MSRP because the market has said we don't want it at the cost that the publisher is trying to charge. In fact, a couple of years ago, Wizards of the Coast got to the point where they didn't want to increase pack prices from $4 to $5 or $6 and put that MSRP on the package. So what they decided to do was they just went to a net pricing model. There's a net pricing model. We get that stuff in, and there's no MSRP that's attached to it. Now, the hilarious part about that is that's not actually true, because the reason why a lot of us are stuck dealing with MSRP to begin with is there's a small company out there called Amazon. And Amazon requires you to have an MSRP in order for them to carry your products on that platform. Well, Wizards of the Coast has a D&D section of Amazon, and they have a Magic section of Amazon. So regardless of whether they say there's an MSRP or not, if they're actively involved in selling on that platform to fans, to customers, that is the MSRP. It's a de facto MSRP. We end up having to deal with that. So when the Magic industry was soft and they liquidated a bunch of product out there, it hurt us immensely because the market said, well, if Wizards is selling it for this price, then you should be able to sell it at this price too, which is a whole nother economics conversation. But at any rate, the other thing that I want to talk about is my business functions just fine on a 50% margin. The whole thing is built around that. We have mixed margin things. So what I have is I have some products that I sell above that, and I have some products that I sell below that. So when I look at the blended rate of how we handle things, it works out to be about a 48% margin at the end of the year. And that's what we work with as far as paying for our rent, paying for our employees, paying for our heating, paying for our social media, and then being able to manage to put some money away in order to improve the store. So whether it's the streaming stuff that we do, whether it's new tables, whether it's new chairs, it's signage, it's different displays, that sort of stuff that we need to constantly improve in the store. New computers. This year, it's going to be putting our entire store online. We will have an online store at some point this year, probably midsummer, that will have all the items that we sell. Those will be available for online purchase. At first, it'll be for in-store pickup, and then after that, it'll be released to the continental US to be able to buy and grab based on shipping and that sort of things. But those prices will mirror what we sell those products for in store. When I take a look at that 50% and I start losing some here and there, it starts to become a challenge. Now, as I said, the majority of the collectible products that we sell fall below that threshold. So we look at them, I look at them a little bit differently as far as a net profit goes versus a marginal position. So if it's a $200 item, maybe I'm going to make $50 on it instead of making $100 on it. So how does that play? Okay, well, it's easier for us to make a sale on that product because we have more customers for those products, so on and so forth. When a product that's a collectible product goes above MSRP, I don't celebrate that. That's not me going around and dancing and doing pirouettes and stuff to say, hooray, now I can sell this product above MSRP. I'm making all this additional money. Because the reality of it is this: I may be making additional money on that product, but I'm also shutting off a certain number of customers, and I need customers for those collectible products because we host events. I need them in the store because they sell us singles and we sell singles to them. We also have tables and chairs that we need for people to play in events and different things like that. So when that product creeps above MSRP, there's an amount of attrition that I'm going to deal with on the consumer level that's higher than I want to. I'm perfectly happy having it here. If it gets up to here, I have to price it up here. And part of the reason why I have to price it up here is because my business is not my customer's side hustle. I haven't built a business where I'm going to just stick hard and fast to MSRP and not take the increase that the market has said based on supply and demand and harvest that money for the store to make up for the differences where every other product that I sell in that space is below MSRP to meet the market demands of the consumer that I'm trying to get into the store. So when I do increase that stuff, typically our prices are slightly below market price, but they're above retail in a way where it doesn't make sense for a customer to come in, make a volume purchase, and then flip that product online to make profit for themselves. That's typically the way that we handle things. We're not at market. We're slightly below market when it exceeds MSRP. When it's below MSRP, we're typically at market. When it exceeds MSRP, we're slightly below market. And a perfect example of that was the last couple of boxes of Star Wars Unlimited that we sold for $120. If you go on TCG Player today or yesterday or the day before, those boxes were running around $140 with like $12 shipping. I could have shifted my boxes over there and tried to make that extra $20, but I deal with fees and shipping and labor and that kind of stuff. It's more important for me to have that product in my local market, selling it to my local players. So there's plenty of people that would look at our pricing when it came to Lorcana. Lorcana is kind of a different animal because it's created this whole other style of customer that has been a welcome customer to have in the store, but it's taken a little bit of education on our side for them to understand why we do things the way that we do. So that we met that with some trepidation at times, but I will say this: we've sold every box of Lorcana that we've brought into the store so far, and we've sold it at whatever price we put it at. Though we've had a number of people complain about what the pricing is, we've had thousands of people smile, and they were happy to be able to buy the product locally and be able to play the events locally and be able to participate locally with the game. So I can't set up the business in a way where I hope that the goodwill of the customer when I leave it at MSRP and I don't make the money that I could by market pricing is then translated into sales, because that is going to turn into resentment too. I get the next set comes out and it's below MSRP on the market. And then I look in their customer rewards account and they're not buying it from me. Is it appropriate for me then to have a conversation and say, well, but don't you remember the first set when I priced it at MSRP and everybody else was pricing it for more? How come you didn't buy your product from me now? I'm at MSRP. Well, it's because the market lower somewhere else. I could buy it from somewhere else because I noticed you have those cards. No, I don't want to have that relationship with the customers. I would rather have an honest relationship that says, I'm going to price the stuff based on what the market says I should, based on the supply and demand that we have here, to try to continue to sell the game locally, to be able to have those customers locally be able to get a hold of product that they can't normally get a hold of, not have to deal with shipping. And a couple of the customers that decide that they don't want the product because it's priced above what they think is fair for it, I don't necessarily disagree with that choice. I have to price it at a certain rate too. I'm doing better if I can price it exactly at MSRP because there's no confusion. I don't have to have this conversation. It's already factored into the percentage that I'm making outside of Lorcana, which I told you already is 13% more expensive than what everybody else's stuff is. So if I'm selling Lorcana at or below MSRP, I'm losing more money than I typically would to be able to do that with other people. I hope that sort of clarifies the reason why we make the decision to price at market. There's plenty of stores in the country and in the world that don't. They price at MSRP on everything across the board. They don't price at market because for part of the reason why I talked about. You look at your pie chart and you look at how much money you need to make on products, and they've just made the decision consciously, we're not going to do it that way because I need to make this much. They don't care about volume sales sort of eclipsing that kind of stuff. They're not looking to have a business where their relationship with their customer is anything based on market. They're just choosing to ignore what the rest of the market says and establish their own market in their store. And that's perfectly reasonable. That doesn't mean that they're a bad store. That doesn't mean that they're running their business incorrectly. Everybody has to choose how to run their business, and it's their choice. The blessing and the curse of the game retail store owner is that you can run your store however you choose to. I would say that not following some fundamentals is part of the reason why we have such an aggressive turnover in our industry, for whatever reason that happens to be. So today I'm going to give 7 best practices that I use that sort of articulates why I feel like the store has been successful. I've been able to grow consistently. We moved from the old space to this space. The size was 2.5 times what it was when we were in the old space. Our payroll doubled. Our sales have only gone up about 25-30%. So it's been interesting in here to work it out. So here are 7 best practices for a successful game store based on what I've done in this store. No specific order on these, though I guess there kind of is. Yeah, actually, you know what? This would be how I would rank these, I guess. So I'm going to start with number 7. And number 7 is effective marketing strategies. So getting my name out to the community, getting my name out to the people locally is super important. The way that we do that is our social media campaigns. So we're on Instagram, we're on Facebook, we're on YouTube now. These episodes are going up on Spotify. Logan has been very big on us getting on, I'll call it shitter. It's X, Twitter. She loves Twitter. I don't Twitter, but she does. So we're Twittering now. Or we're Xing now, or I don't even know what the acronym is because I'm that out of it. We have some presence on TikTok as well. All of these are just different ways for us to tell people locally who we are, what we do. It gives people an idea in a broader sense of who we are as well. So we have tons of publishers that follow our stuff. There's a bunch of retailers around the country that follow our stuff or take a look at what we do. So the pictures and stuff sort of give them their own ideas on how to do things in their store that might be a little bit more successful for them. So social media is super effective for marketing strategies. Also, there's promotions that we do, and when we get the online up and going, Logan doesn't know this, but we're going to look at a newsletter that's going to go out through email as well. So that's going to be fun. That'll probably be just a once a month thing to kind of give everybody an idea what our event calendar looks like, maybe some sales specials and some new products that are coming in. Number 6 is demo stations. We sell fun. Interactive retail is certainly a big part of what we do as a business here. There was a time when I had 14 demo tables in my store. That was probably overkill, just based on the fact that some of those demo tables I could have just probably stacked some product there and sold more than what I sold in the demo table space. And it was really difficult for me to get all my employees all the way to the back end of the store to be able to demo all those things. So from a functionality standpoint now, we've reduced down to 4. I know some retailers that are larger than that, and I know some retailers that are smaller than that, but it gives us a way to interact personally with the customer. It allows us to show them something that's cool and different that they might not know about. It helps us build up those customer relationships. And in fact, the most successful demoers that I have as employees typically are the ones that have the most personal relationships with customers that come in. The customers that come in to seek out my employees typically are the ones that are the most interactive when it comes to showing them games, showing them cool things. They trust their expertise and their capabilities in those areas. Number 5, customer loyalty program. Customer loyalty program is super important to us. It rewards the people that shop with us consistently, or it rewards the people that shop with us with large purchases inconsistently. To summarize ours, to make it as less convoluted as possible, it works out to be roughly $150 worth of purchases, gives you a 10% store credit that goes towards a 20% purchase whenever you decide to use it. That's sort of it in a nutshell. So if you're here and you're purchasing with us regularly, you're going to get a small reward at every about $150 that you spend, depending on what the product line is. A lot of times we have people that they just loop that reward every time they're in here. They spend over $150, boom, they get a $10 off the next time they're in, or that time, or whatever. So we reward the people that actually shop with us. Number 4 is store presentation. This is cleanliness, merchandising, signage, inventory comes into play when you look at that kind of stuff. The way you present yourself to the public, the way that we present ourselves to the public is super important. I'm not sure if I told the story on this show or not, but when we first opened up, I had kind of an older customer that had been with us through the previous ownership and then actually the ownership before this, who came in and he's a little bit surly. And I said, what do you think about the new store and the stuff and the upgrades and the lighting and stuff like that? And his cynical comment to me was, it just feels like it's a Barnes & Noble for games. And he probably looked at that as a derogatory thing to say, but I was certainly happy with the number of women that were shopping and the number of strollers and families that we're seeing now. And our product mix has had to adapt to that a little bit. We have a lot more mainstream customers coming in the door because our layout is nicer than what it was. It's super clean. The bathrooms are functional, that kind of thing. All of that stuff goes into having a great store presentation is super, super critical, because there are some stores that I've walked into that I wouldn't want to take my mom into. And that's pretty much the litmus that I have. If I wouldn't want to bring my mom into the store, there's probably an issue, whether it's music's blaring or some of the imagery that they've decided to use in their store or some of the conversation that's being had. All of those things can be a negative impact on your store presentation. Number 3 is community engagement. I measure the success in the store based on the number of times the door opens. If the door doesn't open, there's no opportunity for profit. And as we talked about in the beginning, and I beat that horse to death, profit is super important to what we do. We have community engagement at every level we possibly can. We have sales that we run strategically throughout the year that drive customers into the store, gives them reasons to shop. We have events that we host daily. We have special events, we have weekly events, we have all kinds of different events. We have events, our event focus is sort of 3 different things. It's recruitment, so we're trying to bring customers into the store, new customers into the store, try out a new game. It's retention, so it's those customers that we have that are happy to shop with us, but they'd like to have something going on. One of our busiest nights of the week is Friday night. And Friday night is a huge board game night for us. And what we've found is there's a ton of people out there where adult activities are focused around drinking. And we don't sell any alcohol here. So there's a whole ton of adults and couples and stuff like that enjoy coming into our store on a Friday night after they've worked hard all week to just sit down and relax in a space to play some board games, rather than having to be focused around something that has to do with a bar or that sort of other third space where people are going to get loud and rowdy and obnoxious. Not to say that we don't have loud and rowdy obnoxious sometimes, but we certainly don't have drunk people here specifically. So community engagement is important for us. We get out in the community. Sometimes we do conventions and we do different things in that area too. Number 2 is diverse inventory. So I'm going to be careful with this, because diverse inventory is critical to our store based on the size and what we have. I think diversity within product lines and within categories is something that each retailer has to look at based on the space that they have, based on the expertise that they have, based on the staff that they have. So it doesn't matter if Dungeons & Dragons is selling extremely well across the nation if you don't have somebody that can talk intelligently about Dungeons & Dragons on staff to give you a little bit of back and forth with the customer. Some things will just continue to sell without you doing much to it. Other things are harder. So what I would say is you can diversify within product types as well. So if you're a CCG store, it's very easy for you to bring in another CCG or a new CCG and decide to try that out and add it to the mix, because you understand singles if you run them, you understand box pricing, you understand events, that sort of thing. If you decided you were going to get into Games Workshop and you were going to bring in their rack and you were going to figure out demos and you're going to try to do slow grow events, if you don't have the size and the space and the culture in your store to be able to take advantage of that, it doesn't matter how well that stuff sells nationally, you're not going to necessarily be successful with it as a retailer just because. The number one thing on my list is customer service. Attitude, enthusiasm, expertise. When a customer walks in the door, they should be greeted every single time. Should be able to have intelligent conversations about whatever product line that they're looking at. That doesn't mean every single employee is trained to sell every single line, although that is the dream. You should have somebody on staff to be able to answer questions appropriately. You should know how to have a relationship with customers, you should have a level of expertise that results in them being able to find and match them up critically with the game that they came in to look for, and to be able to answer whatever questions they have, whether they're new or they're somebody that's been in gaming for 20 or 30 years. We live and die based on customer service. Right now, we've got a 4.8 on Google, which is like nearly impossible to do when you're selling consumer goods and you have events and things like that. And lo and behold, when you look at those ratings, the ones where we have 1-star reviews, typically they have something to do with collectible products. Part of that has to do with people's expectation of what the pricing should be. Some of that has to do with what they think their cards are worth. They don't necessarily know what they have, and sometimes it has to do with what cards that we're selling and whether or not they think that they're worth what we've actually put on there. So customer service is a huge part of what we do. We have a ton of staff on all times because I walk into tons of retail locations now, whether I'm at a Home Goods or an At Home or something like that, and there's one employee there and they've got 19 registers, but I can't find anybody. Nobody will help you out. There's nobody that's there to help you in the aisles. So we lean into that, and we lean into that at a cost for the business. I could try to run this place with 2 or 3 employees at the front, but it's much more functional and it's better for the customers if I have 7. Well, with that 7 comes a certain level of sales and a certain amount of profit that we have to be able to maintain that. Honorable mention is partnerships and sponsorships. We work with a lot of fantastic publishing partners, and we work with some people locally where we handle sponsorships in general. Those are super critical for us. We get to feature their products to customers that wouldn't necessarily know who they are. On the flip side, they share some of our social media and stuff that puts us out to a broader audience and lets them know that this is a good place to shop at and a good place to host events. I am going to wrap it up from there. I'm definitely over my time for sure. Next week, I'm going to talk about Games Workshop, actually, my trials and tribulations and the wonderful things that have happened with Games Workshop. So episode 10 will be Games Workshop focused. I appreciate everybody coming in and hanging out with me. Please click the like and subscribe, and have a great rest of your day.